What's good, guys? It's me, your boy, back today with the rousing conclusion of the Jason series. Now, when we left off, the Argonauts were escaping from Colchis. Thanks to the help of a pretty grisly favor from Medea, she killed her younger brother Absyrtus, which allowed them to get away. So the Argonauts are on the run, and the Colchians are like kind of hot on their asses. Now, before we get started, I gotta say that Medea has my vote for MVP, but we're gonna find out why. But yeah, with that being said, let's get into it. So if you remember from the first episode of the Jason series, the Argo has an oracular beam. So it has a prow that's magic because it is cut from one of Zeus's like sacred trees. So once the stuff goes on with Absyrtus, when Medea kills him, afterward the Argo beaches itself and it tells the Argonauts that it's not going another foot until Jason and Medea cleanse themselves for the murder of Absyrtus. So from there, Jason and Medea have to go across land to get to Aiaia, where Medea's aunt Circe lives. Now, Circe is a sister to Aedes, so she's a fellow child of Helios, and she's a witch. She is phenomenal with magic, probably even more so than Aedes himself. So Jason and Medea go to Aiaia, they ask Circe to cleanse them, and Circe grudgingly does it. Now, I imagine it was grudgingly done because if I'm not mistaken, if you were to purify someone, you couldn't ask why. You either had to say yes or no, and then afterward, if they wanted to tell you exactly what they had done to need cleansing in the first place, then that was up to them. But anywho, those fuckers get cleansed, and we're back on water, baby. So the Argo is kind of making its way back to Greece, and on the way there, we come to a place called Corcyra. Now, Corcyra is ruled by a man named Alcinous and Queen Arete. So as soon as they get to Corcyra, Medea goes to Arete and pleads with her to provide them with protection. Remember, the Colchians are still on their asses. They're just, they don't know where they're at right now, you know, so they aren't like breathing down their backs or anything, but they are still after them. And so Medea pleads to Queen Arete, tells her, you know, hey, we got some people after us, please help me out, give me protection. My dad's a really bad guy and he's trying to fuck me up. So Arete immediately gets to work on her husband Alcinous. And so she's like pleading Medea's case to him and just kind of doing that constantly. So finally he cracks and he says, all right, I'll tell you what, if Medea is no longer a virgin, then she doesn't have to return to Colchis. There's nothing they can do and I'll protect that. So in this instance, to be a virgin just means that you haven't been married yet. Arete sends word to Jason and immediately he takes Medea and they get married in a cave. Arete also gives Medea like 12 handmaidens to like wait on her and stuff. I'm not sure if this is a wedding gift or I had these laying around, take them, or like what the deal was. But they get married, the Argonauts, you know, celebrate, they have a really slamming celebration, everyone has a good time, and just like clockwork, the fucking Colchians show up. But they show up and, you know, Alcinous tells them like, hey, there's nothing you can do here, I got nothing for you, you can't take Medea. Since she's married, she's essentially like someone else's property now. Not great. But I don't know if you got this vibe from like the last video. King Aedes is a hard motherfucker. These Colchians that he sent to find Medea and bring her back, they can't return empty-handed. That would literally mean their lives. They're at an impasse. They can't go back because they don't have Medea, and they can't take Medea because she's her own person now. So they say, fuck it, we're gonna settle our asses right here. And that's what they do. So a lot of them settle right there in Corcyra, and then some of them also settle not too far away from Aiaia, where Circe lives. So Aedes finally hears about this like a year or two later, and homie is furious. He sends a herald to Greece to, you know, demand that they like deliver his daughter back, and they tell him that there's nothing they can do because she left Colchis of her own will. They also bring up something from a few generations back saying that men of Aeetes' race abducted Io, and so, you know, that makes them square. But Io was actually like chased away by a gadfly. So, but that's another myth, so whatever. Alright, so the Argonauts are flooring it for home. So they come across Cape Malea. Now this isn't too far from where the Sirens have their island. Now what the Sirens do is they have voices that are just supremely sweet. They're kind of enclosed by all these like super duper jagged rocks. And what they do is just sit over there and sing, and their voices are so tempting that it drives like sailors kind of mad. They jump off of the ship and like try to swim toward the voices. And of course they get dashed along the rocks, and so the Sirens just kind of lure sailors to their deaths. So when the Argonauts pass the Sirens, luckily we got our boy Orpheus, who is way sweeter on that lyre than these Sirens could ever hope to be with their voices. And so the Sirens are singing, Orpheus is fucking shredding his lyre. And so thanks to our boy, like the Argonauts have no trouble at all getting past them. Snaps for Orpheus. The Argonauts are sailing along again, and this time they're kind of close to eastern Sicily, and they get hit by a crazy wave, and it ends up washing the Argo, like the entire ship, like a mile or so inland, basically into the desert. And so our boys are stuck in the desert with a giant ship that they, like, you're in the desert, bro, like what are you gonna do? And so a goddess by the name of Libya appears to Jason and lets him know that, like, you know, shit's gonna be okay, and kind of tells him what direction he needs to go in. So the Argonauts are carrying the ship for like 12 days through the desert, and there's a strong chance that they would have died of thirst, except Heracles is on his labors right now, and so recently he's had to come through this spot as well on his way to the Garden of the Hesperides, and so he struck a well in the ground that's, like, you know, shooting water. Thankfully the Argonauts come across that, and you know, that spares them from dying of thirst. Not even a part of their crew anymore, and our boy is still saving asses. Anyway, they eventually get out of the desert. Jason has like 2 tripods for some reason. He like gives up one of them, and Triton appears, who is a son of Poseidon, and he kind of grabs the keel of the ship and like guides them to the nearest lake, and from there they're able to continue their journey. All right, so gang is heading north, and we come to Crete. Now I don't know if you remember Crete from the first episode, but you know, that's where the labyrinth is, that's where Minos ruled, that's where the 14 Athenian youths were sent like every 9 years to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. So we get to Crete, and the Argonauts are stopped by a motherfucker named Talos. Talos is a enormous bronze giant, and yeah, that's what he is. He's not letting them pass. So the Argonauts are like, you know, kind of stressing. They don't know how they're going to get past Talos. They don't think they can fight this big motherfucker. And so Medea's like, watch out, I got it. So she calls up to Talos. Oh, Talos. And what she tells Talos is that she has a drought that he can drink that will grant him immortality. My guess is our boy Talos isn't the brightest. Doesn't ask any questions. He takes the drought and he drinks it. So of course, he gets sleepy, he passes out, and once his big ass falls, there's a stopper in his neck, which is apparently like his only weak spot. Medea unplugs like the stopper that's in his neck, and then a colorless ichor just, like, you know, escapes out of his body, and so he bleeds out. So yeah, shout out to Medea, team on her back. All right guys, the crew finally gets back. They reach the beach of Iolcus, but no one's there to greet them. And so what they hear from a nearby boatsman is that a lot of people started dying in Iolcus while the Argonauts were away. And in the midst of all this chaos, Peleus saw his chance to go ahead and get rid of Jason's parents, Aeson and Polymele. Now while Jason's been away, Aeson and Polymele have had another child by the name of Promachus. So Peleus decides, I think I finally had enough of you two, you three. And so he decides that he's going to kill him. But Jason's father Aeson stops him and says, I would like the dignity of being able to kill myself if I'm going to die. And so Peleus like says that's cool. And so Aeson drinks bull's blood, which kills him. Polymele kills herself with a knife and curses Peleus up until the very moment that she dies. And poor little Promachus has his little baby brains bashed out all over the palace floor. Peleus is a full-on demon, my dude. But Jason gets all of this news, and so he, you know, tells the boatsman not to tell anyone that the Argonauts have returned. So here we are. All of the Argonauts agree that Peleus deserves to die, but they don't really know how to go about making sure that he does. One of the Argonauts that's with him is actually a son of Peleus by the name of Acastus. And so Acastus is like, hey, I can't really just like directly oppose my father like that. Conflict of interest there. And all the other Argonauts are like, hey man, we definitely want to help, but there's only like 90 of us and they have a whole army, so we would get obliterated. So they're like, tell you what, like, let us go back home, we can get our armies together, and then we can cumulatively raise a force that's able to go against the Iolcans. So Medea's kind of like sitting back and listening, and she's like, all right, listen up, we don't have that kind of time. That's going to take months. So I'll tell you what, all I need y'all to do is make sure the Argo stays hidden, and later on tonight, when you see 2 torches being waved from that tower over there, that'll mean that the king is dead, the city gates are unlocked, and the throne is ready to be taken again. Now, this is where MVP Medea is in full effect. Not that she hasn't been MVP already. So far on the journey, Medea has acquired a few things. Like I said, she got those 12 handmaidens from Queen Arete, but she also gets this image of Artemis that's like kind of a little statue, but it's hollow in the middle. And so this is what she does. Using magic, She makes herself appear as an old crone. Then she gets her 12 handmaidens to like all dress up like very strangely, and trailing her, they all walk up to the gates of Iolcus. Now, once they come up to the sentinels, you know, the guards that are standing at the gates, she tells the guards that she's come from the land of the Hyperboreans to like bless Iolcus with good fortune. Now, these guys standing guard, this is way above their pay grade, and their main focus is, you know, not denying a goddess and not catching wrath for that. So they let them into the city. And once they're in the city, Medea and her women kind of start interacting with the city's inhabitants and manage to start like a religious frenzy amongst all the common people. Now, finally they get to the palace. Peleus wakes up and he's terrified. He is absolutely afraid of offending Artemis somehow. So he's like, yo, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. And so Medea comes in, you know, like I said, she's still disguised as an old crone. And she's like, relax, I just came here to rejuvenate you. You see, what she tells him is that his son Acastus died on the voyage of the Argo without children. So that means that if Peleus wants an heir, he's gonna have to be young enough to make an heir himself. And so that's why the crone wants to rejuvenate him in Artemis's name. Now, Peleus also has 3 daughters, Alcestis, Evadne, and Amphinomi. But he hears this from Medea disguised, and he's a little wary. He doesn't believe her at first. And so she like turns off the spell that's over her, and so she looks normal again. Now, we know that she was disguised in the first place, but from Peleus's perspective, this old woman said that she wants to make him younger and then just did it to herself. So to provide further proof, Medea grabs an old goat, kills it and cuts it into 13 pieces, throws it into a cauldron, and then starts doing Colchian spells that are disguised as Hyperborean spells. I don't know how Peleus would know the difference of all people, but whatever. Throws the goat into a pot, starts doing this spell, and then produces a young goat. So again, from the perspective of Peleus and his daughters, she's just dismembered this goat, done a spell that, you know, made it young again. But what's actually going on here is, thanks to magic, she kind of has a younger goat stuffed into this hollow image of Artemis. And so once she does her business with the old goat, she kind of just produces a new young one. And so the king sees this and he's convinced. He says, sign me up, I want that to happen right now. So she gives him like a drought, he falls asleep. And so then she tells his daughters, all right, I need you guys to do to him exactly what I did to that goat, and then he'll come back younger. Now, only Alcestis doesn't agree to this. She says, I don't care what the end result is going to be. I'm not killing my dad for any reason. Good on you, Alcestis. But the other two run knives off through his ass. And so they put the cauldron on to boil, and Medea says, all right, now while that's going, we need to go up to the top of the tower and, you know, invoke the moon. And so she gets the girls to grab torches, and they go up to the top of the tower. The Argonauts see those torches, and they are able to run in and sack the city unopposed. So they did it. The whole point of this mission was so that Jason could get the Eocan throne back, right? Well, do you remember that kid of Peleus's named Acastus that's been hanging out with Jason this whole time? Jason gets scared and he starts thinking, well, what if he gets vengeful one day or immediately for what we did to his dad? So Jason says, I'll tell you what, you can actually have the Eocan throne, Acastus. I want to roll somewhere else anyway. So all this work that everyone has done for this specific mission is kind of just kaput. I mean, they'll always have those experiences, I guess, but like, anywho, Jason takes the golden fleece to Orchomenus, which is, you know, somewhere within Iolcus. He kind of brings, you know, that whole thing full circle, because if you remember in that first video, Phrixus's ghost wasn't going to be appeased until the golden fleece was brought back to Orchomenus. And so with an insane amount of help, Jason's done it. So we're going to jump back over to Medea for a second. At this point, she is the last remaining child of Aeetes. We know that Aeetes currently rules in Colchis, but before he went off to rule Colchis, he was the ruler of Corinth. But when he went off to rule Colchis, he left a man by the name of Bunis in his place to lead. Bunis passes away, and then a guy by the name of Corinthus is ruling Corinth. Corinthus dies, mysteriously. And so the Corinthian throne is open for Medea to go ahead and grab. And so she does that. And so now, thanks to Medea, Jason is the ruler of another kingdom. And from there, they spend the rest of their days and live happily ever after. Come on, you guys know that's not the case. They do live pretty happily for about 10 years together though. After 10 years, Jason gets to thinking about, you know, when they got to Corinth and what was going on then. And he puts it into his mind that Medea potentially poisoned Corinthus and that's how they got the throne. So maybe he's feeling a little bit weird about it because the throne that he now has was ill-gotten, potentially. Coincidentally, Jason has also been making goo-goo eyes at a Theban princess by the name of Glauci, and Glauci is the daughter of King Creon, who rules Thebes. Like I said, rather conveniently, Jason finds a reason to, divorce Medea, and then goes and gets with Glauci. Now, Medea doesn't confirm or deny what Jason said about her poisoning Corinthus, but instead she's like, hey man, you made an oath to me all that time ago back on Colchis, and you can't go against that. And Jason responds to this by saying that, yeah, I made an oath, but I really didn't have a choice, and forced oaths aren't binding, to Jason at least. So yeah, by this time, Jason and Medea have a few children together. Now this is where the myths differ in some places. Some myths say that they had like 7 sons and 7 daughters, and there's another that says that they just had 2 children together. I think for the sake of ease, we're gonna go with the 2 children one here. So Jason marries his new girl, and as a wedding gift, Medea makes Glauci a super nice robe and sends it to her by way of her children. So sweet of you, Medea. So Glauci gets it, unsuspecting, because who's going to question a gift delivered by super cute children? A lot of people I know, actually, but like that, I guess that's not the point. Glauci puts on this robe. It is an amazing fit. It feels nice. The only thing is it's just a little warm. These things happen. But then it gets a little warmer, and pretty soon it's hot, and not long after that it's unbearable, and before you know it, the robe is burst into flames while she's wearing it. And now this isn't like a contained fire either. This robe has burst into flames and consumed the entire 2nd floor of the palace where she's at, killing her father King Creon as well. So when this happens, it's not difficult to determine who done it. So Jason's leading the charge, and they are flying to Medea's house, and they get there just in time to see Medea escaping the house in a chariot led by winged serpents that were a gift from her grandfather Helios. You see, but she's on that chariot alone. And when Jason goes into the house, who does he find but his own 2 children, stabbed to death, bleeding on the floor? That, Medea, is not MVP behavior. So once this happens, Jason has no one. All of his friends are gone. They've dispersed. He doesn't have a new wife. He doesn't have an old wife. His children are dead. Everywhere he goes, men hate him. And also the gods have forsaken him because he went back on his vows to Medea. So our boy is down bad. He is poor. He has nowhere to go. So he's just drifting around. So finally one day he comes back to Corinth. Since the end of the Argonauts' adventure, the Argo has been beached at the isthmus of Corinth, and it's kind of just chilling there like a big trophy, their jersey like up in the rafters. So Jason decides that he is gonna just sit under the Argo one day and just like reminisce about the glory days. He also decides that he's gonna hang himself from the Argo, but before he can get the chance, the Argo is falling apart at this point, and the part of the ship that he's sitting under crumbles, falls on his head, killing him immediately. As for Medea, right after she murdered her children, she actually stayed in Thebes and went to Heracles, who was there at the time, because in the past, Heracles told her that if Jason ever proved to be unfaithful, that he would protect her. Now, a cool thing about these myths that I've like kind of put together as I've been reading is that Heracles and Jason at every point have kind of been like diametrically opposed. Jason, kind of was the champion of Hera, while Heracles was, the exact opposite of that for Hera. She wants that motherfucker dead. And so, there was the contest between Heracles and Jason, and then, the contention in the crew when Jason decides to leave Heracles. And then you have this cool little tidbit about like Heracles making a promise to Medea, which is like, at every point they are just like, always like butting heads. But Heracles does that, he keeps her safe, but the Theban people won't allow her to stay there since she killed the king and the princess, which is fair. After that, we see, like back in the first video, she goes to Athens and then she marries Aegeus. But then after trying to poison Theseus, she's driven out of there as well. Eventually though, she comes back home to Colchis, where her father's throne has been usurped by someone else. And so she is able to get back in her father's good graces by helping him win his throne back. And that's where she lives out her days. But yeah, man, that's Jason. That's Jason and the Argonauts. This, as expected, was a super duper fun one, man. I think for our next myth, I'm gonna kick it off from the beginning, maybe get into some like creation stuff, birth of the gods. Definitely let me know in the comments or whatever if there are some myths that you're curious about that you want me to cover. Maybe there's some that you aren't familiar with, or that you are familiar with that you just like to hear from me. I couldn't be mad at you for that. Thanks so much to everyone for watching, to everyone that's like subscribed and has spent some time here with me. I definitely appreciate it. It's definitely an honor to be able to just like talk to you guys about what I love. But yeah, man, we'll be back super soon. This has been Kid Achilles. Peace out.